Hello, everyone. I'm Logan Rose. I'm a junior math major at Marshall University, and this is my project on controlling COVID-19. So we made a model of COVID-19 across a small college campus with population about 4,000, and we split the population into 7 different classes, and one person can only be in one class at any given time. So why don't we just go to our classes? So we have the S class, which are the susceptibles. And then once the person becomes exposed to the disease, they go into the exposed class, which is the E. And then they either become asymptomatic or infectious. So asymptomatic, they cannot spread the disease, and they're actually less infectious than the regular symptomatic, about half as infectious. So they either go to the A class or the I class. And those in the I class will go into the quarantine class. And from there, once they're in the quarantine class, they can no longer spread the disease. And then those in quarantine either go to the R class, which is recovered or dead. Meanwhile, those in the asymptomatic class go straight to the recovered class. Now, this isn't entirely accurate because some asymptomatic individuals do test positive. And in the future, we're thinking about adding a second quarantine class, but this project was completed in one semester and we just didn't have the time. But that's something we're definitely considering in the future. So here are different parameters. We made several equations, which are shown below, which show the interaction between our different classes. So our parameters are R, the rate of off-campus transmission, which we have set to 0. And in the future, we're looking to try to calculate an accurate value for that. We just haven't had the time yet. And then beta, the rate of symptomatic transmission, eta, the rate of asymptomatic transmission, K, or kappa, the rate of loss of latency, P, the percentage of infected individuals that remain asymptomatic, alpha, the recovery rate of asymptomatic individuals, gamma, the recovery rate of symptomatic individuals, F, the percentage of population that survive infection, and finally mu, the rate individuals are placed into quarantine. And mu is 1 over the number of days it takes to put an individual into quarantine. So if it's 1 over 3, it takes 3 days for somebody to go into quarantine. So here's our system of equations. Again, these just show the relationships between our different classes. And you'll notice I have values for each of these parameters, which I got most of these from a paper written by Robert Smith, and then the others I got from the CDC. But there's one that we calculated using these other parameters, and that was beta. So we split our equations into 2 different components, the ones that did transmit the virus, so mainly our A class and our I class, into one matrix, which is the F matrix. And our non-transmission components are into our V matrix. And then using Mathematica, we calculated the next generation matrix. And this gave us a value for R naught. What R naught is, it is basically, say you have one infectious person. That's the average number of people that person will spread the virus to. So using Mathematica, we created this equation for R naught. And we solved it for beta. So we plug in an estimate of R naught given by Robert Smith. And he estimated R naught to be 2.35. So on average, one infectious person will infect just over 2 people. And then we also plugged in our parameter values, and this gave us a symptomatic transmission rate of beta equal to 0.764. So after we calculated beta, we did an initial simulation parameter analysis. So we simulated the equations using Python, and then we played around with the parameters a little bit just to see what effect that would have on the graph. So here's the graph with our original parameters. So on the x-axis, we have the time in days. On the y-axis, we have the number of people in each class, and that's grouped in the thousands. So we played around with the different parameters. And again, mu was the rate it takes people to go into quarantine. What's interesting is if you increase that time by or if you decrease that time by just 1 day, it will greatly reduce the total number of infections, as you can see in the graph on the right. So our graph on the left has mu as our original value of 3 days. And on the right, we have it as the value of 2 days. So after we did our simulations, we introduced 2 controls, which we added to the original equations. And those were mask wearing, which we denoted as U1, and increased testing, which we denoted as U2. So we used optimal control, which is a process. The basis of optimal control, you want to reduce the number of infectious and asymptomatic individuals, while also reducing the cost it takes to implement those controls. So to that end, we calculated a set of adjoint equations in a software known as Mathematica. And then using MATLAB, we solved the state equations, our original equations, forward in time, and then the adjoints backwards in times. And this gives us the following results. So on the left, this just considers the first control, which was mask wearing. And on the y-axis, that is the optimal rate. So what this is the percentage of people that need to be wearing masks. And then, of course, on the x-axis is just time. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, it is recommended that 100% of people wear masks. But as time goes on, this number can drop until eventually it levels out at about 60%. And then on the right, we consider both controls. So in the red is mask wearing, and then in the green is extra testing. And if extra testing is above 1, that means that there is significant extra testing. Whereas whenever it levels out at 1, that's just the regular amount of testing. So at the very beginning of the pandemic, there's a lot of extra testing. But as time goes on, this becomes less cost effective. So eventually it drops down until it's just regular testing again. So that's about it. I'd like to thank Marshall University and my advisor, Dr. Anna Mummert. And if you have any questions, feel free to comment below. Thank you for watching.